start this on live onto the Village Facebook page, so that'll be live in just a moment, but we're still waiting on a few folks. I'm told that when I say the word folks, that's very Wisconsin. Is that accurate? Sort of, maybe. Oh, when I say neat, I say neat a lot. Neat, is that Wisconsin?
I think that's Wisconsin.
Neato is very 70s. So
I was going to say,
I think we need to bring that
70s.
back. Neato.
Neato. Kristen, did you have a good day today? I'm feeling your high vibes here.
I got to go outside and it was 70 degrees. And in October, that's going to be a good day. So, yes.
Love it. I listened to our professional development while walking this morning, and it was quite amazing to get to be completely distraction free, just except for the sunshine was such a gift.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah, I'm enjoying this week because it's going to get cold soon, right?
For sure.
Let's not talk about cold. It's going to be really nice all the way through October. And then we can talk about cold in November.
Yeah.
Okay, so we should be live on the Village's Facebook page as well now. I see, Chris, if you can maybe send a quick note to Bill as a reminder, I'll send one to Aaron.
I have Bill's number. I will happily do that.
I can send one to Bill.
You got it, Gary?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
No, all I have is his email, Chris. But I'll try that.
Okay, I can send it. All right, so I've sent messages to both Bill and Aaron. I'll assume that they'll join us shortly. So it is 6:35, Chris. If up to you on when you want to kick it off here. Oh, Aaron's on.
Okay, I just talked to Bill. He'll be on in about 3 minutes, he said.
Do you want to sit tight for the 3 minutes?
I think that's fine, unless everybody objects and we want to start right now.
All right.
Welcome, Aaron. Was that a decision to sit tight, Todd?
I think yes. I think that's it. Sitting tight.
All right. Perfect.
And Caitlin's on with us, Chris. So when you're ready to go, she'll take care of roll call for you. And Chris, I'd also just mentioned that the agenda does have the citizen comments on items on or off the agenda, so that is on the agenda. There are Bill's on his way in. Just to confirm, Bill, can you hear us? Yep, okay. And Aaron, you were able to hear us too, right?
Yeah, I'm just trying to switch to my hotspot quick, so it's a little more stable, but I'm here. One sec.
Okay. All right, I think we're all set then.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Caitlin, roll call, please.
Nyla Fry. Here. Kristen Runke.
Here.
Bill Random.
Here.
Bill Willems.
Here.
Aaron Moran.
Here.
Gary Hertzberg.
Here.
Chris Zellner.
Here. So, Todd, I'm going to let you introduce from this point forward. Go ahead.
Well, I don't, let me bring up my video too. Not a ton for me to share. This is largely in the hands of Betsy and Antonio. And Betsy, were you going to cover, just give a little background to the citizens who might be watching this now or watching the recording, what process you've done with the board already to this point? Okay, that'd be great. I'll turn it over to both of you then.
Great. All right. Antonio, are you ready to welcome?
Of course. First and foremost, I really want to thank you all for the opportunity once again tonight to get back together. It's been a little bit of some time in between since we had the greatest moments of getting to know each and every last one of you a little bit more and sharing some personal reflections, some personal stories, and really building a sense of community, even though we did that in our individual meetings. We are very, very thankful that once again, that we get the honor of being with you all and just moving forward in the work that you all want to do in making Waunakee a place that you all would like it to be. And you know, it's been very, very interesting just how the world has been moving lately and just how the world is operating in this sense of time. And I can't think of a better way to build up under, I would say, up under the weight of what we are seeing just in our own communities and in the nation today. And for me, that's one of the best ways to really build and really show the resiliency of the character that each of you possess. So once again, welcome all of you and thank you for your time tonight.
So this is a really unusual board meeting, and I'm going to do a little bit of addressing just those of you participating right in front of me, and then those who may be watching this right now live, and then watching this in the future. So my name's Betsy Delzer. I'm a Waunakee resident. I've been a longtime Middleton School employee since 2001. Antonio and I have worked together since 2018. We're coaches and consultants with Rise for the Greater Good, and that's what brings us to you all, both those I can see and those I don't see tonight. So we have had the opportunity to meet with each and every one of the folks on the screen and the board. And we did this in sort of the spirit of storytelling and listening, right? So just really listening and learning about life stories. And in light of that, or in that same vein, this evening is going to be really different because what we're trying to do is create a container for those stories and insights to come forth. So while we've given you some questions in advance, we really just hope that you are able to connect to one another. If we were in person, we would be seated in a circle. And we are honoring the tradition of Indigenous tribes that have shared with us the ability to have equity of voice in a circle format, right? So we aren't able to have a circle tonight, and we instead are what Antonio and I call a squarecle, right? Because we are on the screen. But we really are hopeful that we're able to be as authentic as possible even in this sort of semi-artificial way. So here's a couple of things just logistically, right? So just now we heard the phone ring. That happens for a village board president, right? So whether it's a technology issue, like a distraction somewhere around us, or our Zoom clips in and out, we will just go with the flow and roll with it. We will be having rounds. So we actually have 4 different questions. And one of the things Antonio and I really don't know is what kind of time we need. At some point, there was a point where we were kind of mapping things out. I'm like, I think this meeting's gonna last till 1 a.m., folks, but we're not gonna do that because I know you have long meetings and big decisions to make sometimes. This is a really different kind of feel. So we will try very hard to stick to 90 minutes that we've committed to together. And I would just encourage you, those of you who are here with me on the screen, just try to, not eliminate, but maybe close down as many distractions as possible. It looks like many of you are. And you might even see me taking notes.
Speaking of distractions, Betsy.
Yeah.
Let me just real quick, I want to mention that we jumped right into what we're doing, which is great, but we did include on our board agenda the opportunity for public comment on items on or off the agenda, as is typical with board meetings. So I wanted to ask whether, Chris, you wanted to afford that opportunity now before we get deeper, or do it at the end?
I guess let's do it now. We usually have it at the beginning of our meeting, so let's give that opportunity if people do want to comment before we start. Sounds good?
Sure, yep. So I do see one attendee. If that person would like to speak, click the raise hand button and I will bring you in. No hand up, Chris.
Perfect. Then let's move on.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you for the first interruption. I actually had the first, you the second. So we'll move on from there. Thanks.
Okay. All right. From here on out, I'm good. I'd have no more formalities, right? Because I messed that up our first time I visited as well. So if anything happens, this is my first. This is definitely this first time here. Okay. So I want to get my bearings. We are like looking forward to this time, and there's just a part of me that as I was sort of walking and preparing for our time together, I also felt the need to just say that the work that we are doing, we're just scratching the surface of as a group. And I'm so grateful that we're doing that. And there's so much more, right? There's so much more that we can achieve together. If somehow tonight we get to know each other in a slightly different way, we hear each other's perspectives and life stories in a way that kind of deepens our understanding of one another, then our goal has been met. And I think that's something that we can achieve in our time together. All right. So with that, I want to just mention, I mentioned if we were together in real life, we would be sitting in a circle. We would also have a few mementos and pieces with us. And I would have a talking piece, okay? And with the talking piece, what that enables us to do is sort of hand it to one another, and the person holding the piece is the speaker. And it's a visual signal, and it also just helps maintain this equity of voice. Tonight, I have my keys to my home in Waunakee. It's not really a play on Waunakee. It's just more so the symbol of what we're doing here, right? I don't own anything in Waunakee. I rent here, and I'm grateful to be here. We are on the land of the Peoria and Sauk and Meskwaki tribes, the Ho-Chunk, Winnebago, and Miami, and that's to whom the land really belongs. I am a visitor, and I am humble here, all right? This work is, as I said, we're scratching the surface. And the other reality is it shouldn't feel good, right? Like if this feels really good, we're not doing it right, okay? So I want to just name that, and also in that, those of you who are listening and just that I can't see and that I'm not interacting with, please take care of yourselves. And those of you on the screen as well, just be mindful of your breath and get grounded when you need to get grounded. All right, Antonio, did I miss anything?
No, I think you did very well. I think you hit everything right where it needs to be. So I would like to just also start us off by reading this quote from James Baldwin. And it reads, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." And so if you wouldn't mind just taking like 30 to 60 seconds and
Did he freeze just on my end, or did he freeze for you too?
He froze.
He's frozen.
He froze. You know what? I told him, I said, you're gonna do your work in Middleton and you might freeze over there. So let's see, is he back yet?
yeah, I should be back.
There he is.
Oh, there you are. Okay, go ahead.
It happens. So what I was asking is for everyone to take a second, which they sound like they maybe had a minute to sit with this quote. And as I think about this quote, honestly, I think about the conversations that we all had a chance to have. And you all brought this to the surface of knowing what needed to be faced in order to start change. And I want to make sure that as we move through tonight, Betsy and I are just here to kind of just help engage in a dialogue, but a lot of the learning and things that nature will still be done.
Internally, he's going to say a lot of the learning is going to be something that you're pulling from within. I wouldn't normally finish his sentence, but I think he froze again. All right, I'm going to move us forward to the next slide. Are you back yet, Antonio?
Holy smokes, it's going to be a long one. Yes. All right.
That's good.
So our circle, what is it called again, Betsy?
Squircle.
Yeah. All right. So equity of voice, speak and listen from the heart. Trust you will know what to say. And just know that you will always say just enough. Be honest with yourself and be gentle with yourself as well. And for those of you that are not on the screen with us, but the outside observers, please also be mindful of our guidelines, and also be gentle with yourself as well, and also challenge yourself at the same time.
Thank you. So how this is going to work is I'm going to read the question, and then I will be kind of calling on you, and we're going to come back to seeing each other in just a moment, but sometimes it helps to read the question. We're all different kinds of learners and observers. So this also is our circle order. So you kind of are able to guesstimate when you're going to be called on, but with that, really engage in listening to your teammates, because sometimes we're planning so much in what we're trying to say, and again, we just want to create a little bit of space for authenticity and for the insights that you want to share. Okay, so I will, after Kristen's done, for example, I will say Nyla's name and then so forth and so on. All right. So I'm going to read this question as it is right here, and then I'm going to stop screen sharing, and there's going to be a moment, and Kristen, then you will go first, okay? So many of you are longtime residents in Waunakee. We currently sit in the midst of a global pandemic, and for hundreds of years, the pandemic of racism. As you consider co-creating a more inclusive village where there's a shared sense of peace, safety, and belonging for all, what do you hope for or envision? And Kristen, will let you take us first.
So I hope for a community in which all people can build a fulfilling life, however they define that. I hope that we grow into a community that has a reputation as a diverse and inclusive community that supports all of its members. And I think it's time that we identify and dismantle the barriers that are faced by different groups in achieving their personal goals and our goals as a community.
Thank you. Nyla? Oop, Nyla, can you unmute?
Okay. I hope that we can work on becoming a village where all people feel comfortable in contributing in various ways that make them happy. Because when people are invested in a community, they have stakes in it and it builds the community. I hope that we can create a place that feels welcome and included, and everyone feels included. And I feel it's time that the village creates a plan working for inclusion in all aspects of building and strengthening our community.
Thanks, Nyla. Phil?
I just hope we have a town, village, where everybody can be as happy as I am. I'm happy. I know lots of people and I get to work with people, and I want people that move into town to be happy and get to work with me.
Thank you, Phil. Chris?
So I mentioned in our individual meetings that one of the things that's happening, in my opinion, currently in the village is that when I go out for a walk in the community, I notice that we are becoming more diverse. In that when I was growing up and here for all the years, my earlier years, there was very little diversity that I saw. And I noticed that diversity, which is the first step. I'd like it to be where I just am going down the street and it's just all the people are here. Doesn't matter who they are. Everybody's enjoying the community, as Phil said, and I don't have to say, oh, that's a minority. That's over there. I'm noticing it. I notice it now. I want it to be where I don't, it's just, there's more people over there. That's great. And then have a safe community. That's one of the things that Waunakee's been known for. It's safe, and I view it as welcoming, and we need to be more welcoming. That's all.
Thanks, Chris. Gary?
Yeah, I guess make Waunakee a village where everyone has the opportunity and is welcomed. I hope he can create a place that encourages community involvement and acceptance of all races and beliefs. It's time for Waunakee to change any misconceptions concerning racial equity in our community and condemn any acts of racial injustice, and just make sure everybody's welcomed and can take part of this great community.
Thanks, Gary. Erin.
I hope for a community that is welcoming and accessible, but also a community that everyone agrees it should be welcoming and accessible, and that we can identify, policies and places that either here or regionally we haven't been, and work to fix them.
Thanks, Erin. Finally, Bill.
I guess I'm stealing from Phil too. I would like everybody to be as happy as I am in the groups of people that I know, and that I wouldn't notice diversity when it's in Waunakee, because it should be just part of our day. And I would like basically an open community.
So part of our process right here is, in a circle, I said, and we handed that around by calling on you, and I appreciate that sequence. There is a space in which, if we want to have some responses, I will be checking in with Antonio, and we decided, like, if we did a response after every single person, that's when we thought we would be here until 1 in the morning. So, but I also we wanted to give some spaciousness. So there's great times to follow the rules, and then there's great times to listen to what is needed. So does anybody within the group need or want to respond to anything any of your teammates have said at this time? Go ahead, Nyla. Mute. It's okay.
It sounds like many of us are on the same track. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's a great observation. And, I do think that was one of the things that Antonio and I came away with when we met with you individually. And one of the reasons we were excited to bring you together tonight is there is a lot of commonality, and that's really, really important for sort of the breadth and the depth of the work that you have and the responsibility you have as a collective. Antonio, anything at the moment that you want to respond to?
No.
Okay. Anyone else within the team want to say anything? Okay, so before we move to round 2, my response is really just more so a recent insight. I was listening to a podcast I did not send to you on our resource list, but I really feel like I need to add it. It's with Resma Menakem and Krista Tippett from On Being. And the name of the podcast was Notice the Rage, Notice the Silence. And the thing that came up that I'm just going to put into the space is he was actually calling into question the term diverse as a word of, like, diverse from what, right? And so even as we're considering the word diversity, it of course is everywhere. And that was a cause for pause for me recently this week, because one of the practices I really try to do is notice, like, when I'm white centering and when I am like thinking through that white lens is, and when we think about diversity or the word itself, I just want to bring forth that insight of, like, diverse from what, right? So I don't really have an answer to that. It was just more something that I wanted to bring into the space. All right, Antonio, are you ready for round 2?
Yes. And if I kind of freeze, please feel free to pick me up.
I will. Has been done.
I think for round 2, we have Gary, Kristen, and Phil. And Gary, you're up first. The question reads, I don't know if you want to screen share, Betsy, just get an opportunity to check it out first.
Will do.
Okay. All right, there we go. So we know that reflection and deep inner work is vital and a necessity to dismantle and disrupt racism. Tell us about a story or an experience you had that significantly altered your own racial awakening.
Yeah, I had shared a story with Betsy and Antonio as I was in charge of the youth football program for all the coaches, and I had gotten a call from Chris Hetzel one day. Chris, I know from the schools, and she's very involved. And she said, you know, we got a young man in school here who really needs some help. And I think football would be a good outlet for him. You know, what can you do? And I said, well, hey, let's get him involved in the program. The program in Waunakee has been very open and make sure anybody who wants to play football, that there aren't barriers of financial resources or things that wouldn't allow a kid to play. So anyway, as the story goes, the young man didn't have a way to get to the practices. So I would pick him up every day. And I'd have my son and a couple other boys in the car. We'd go pick him up. And he really had a challenging life as probably a 10-year-old kid. You know, he came from his mom worked a couple jobs. She's a wonderful lady. She worked as hard as she could work to raise two boys, and no father in the home for him to look to. And his older brother was in a lot of trouble. And he was a kid that I thought, as I shared, I thought, I think I can help this kid. I think I can, turn him around and get him involved. And, for a year, and my son would always question, well, Dad, why do we have to stop and pick him up? And I tried to explain to my son, that, what, he doesn't have the things that you have. He doesn't have the opportunity. And this is something little that we can do to help him. And, he stayed out for football that year, and the following year, we could not get him to go back out for football. And he just continued to have a tougher time at home. And I almost felt guilty at the time that, here I thought I can save this kid. I mean, I can make a difference. And I would like to think I made a difference in his life. I sometimes think I made maybe a bigger difference in my son's life. We actually had to watch that and learn about the things that he has and the things that other kids don't have a chance. I mean, since this boy has gone on and committed suicide about a year ago, and it really brought to my attention that help you understand that these kids, in some cases, they just have a hard way out. I mean, it makes you understand how difficult it is for some of these kids in the environment that they're in to have a life and grow and have the enjoyment that a lot of our kids are lucky enough to have. So, yeah, pretty impactful to me. And I asked a question, what I could have done more. So, thanks.
It does look like he's frozen. Oh, there you are. You're back.
I'm back.
Just before, go ahead, Betsy.
Were you going to respond to Gary at all, Antonio?
I'm just gonna tell him, like, I really appreciate you sharing, and yes, I recall the time that we had when we connected over this story. So just thank you once again. And what you did bring to my attention is something that I forgot to mention early on, Gary, was that even in the format that we are getting together tonight in, it brings out a sense of vulnerability. And for me, vulnerability is like the greatest equalizer, because when you have the fortitude to show vulnerability, you allow others to see part of you that they probably could not see prior to or before. And as someone like myself that pride myself on being vulnerable day in and day out, the last couple of weeks, I've been really pushing to peel back layers of my own vulnerability to try to deepen that sense, because I think that is the deepest part of building a bridge, a connector. So as you were speaking right away, Gary, I was like, shoot, I definitely forgot to mention that, because I wanted to bring that into the space, because ultimately that is what you all are doing tonight with one another, but most importantly, in front of your community. And I think that has a lot to say about who you are as individuals. So once again, thank you for sharing, Gary. And next we go to Kristen.
Unmute. Thank you, Antonio. I grew up in Sauk Prairie, north of here, and I'm a child of the 80s. And at the time, Sauk Prairie was an overwhelmingly white community. Nearly all of the families in town emigrated as a group over a period of time from the same areas of Germany. So a very close-knit, ethnically, racially, all one type of community. And my window into the world was really in the 80s, television. And so what I saw on television was, for the most part, the only people that did not look like me. And so the Cosby Show and A Different World and some of those really big shows in the 80s were my window onto the world. After college, I got married. And when I was 23, my husband and I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, which is a much different place than Wisconsin. And we lived in the city proper, which is at the time was, and still today is, about 60% African-American, 40% races other than African-American. And I worked for the Red Cross, and our staff, overwhelmingly women in the departments that I worked in, and it reflected the population of the city. So very diverse, and I'm centering on whiteness, Betsy, but a population that reflected the community. And so my first professional experiences, my first significant professional experiences, were in a world that looked very different from the one that I grew up in and the one that I went to college in. A lot of the people that I worked with in Atlanta and a lot of the organizations that I worked with, the folks were by the age that I am now, in their 50s. A lot of them had marched with Dr. King when they were teenagers and had participated in some of these really significant moments. And when we were sitting around the lunch table and whatnot, would talk about this. So I'm growing and developing as a professional in this environment that for me was very enriching and very, just a rewarding place and a rewarding time to work in Atlanta in the Red Cross, with the folks that I was working with. And it never occurred to me that my experience was so significantly different until there was this moment. A lot of my accounts, I work in the Midtown and the Buckhead section, which is the business section, and then Buckhead was a really upscale community. And I was accustomed to walking into some of these very exclusive country clubs, Cherokee Country Club, Piedmont Driving Club, to talk about their blood drives. Now, if you know anything about me, I come from a very much a working class family. I went to UW Stevens Point. My family, because of its medical bills when I was growing up, often had a hard time making ends meet. There is no way that I, in my 20s, or my parents could have afforded to play a round of golf at one of these golf clubs, much less belong. But when I walked in there, knowing kind of the code in the South of how you dress, with my little suit on, looking like the young professional, never once was my presence in these very exclusive places ever questioned. They always assumed that I was the daughter of somebody, and always kind of waved me in to see whoever I was seeing. The real moment for me that was jaw-dropping and eye-opening is I was going into Cherokee Country Club with a coworker of mine who was about 5 or 6 years older. She was a Spelman graduate, and Spelman is an all-women's historically Black college in Atlanta. She was married to an Ivy League educated lawyer. Her parents were very well to do. She had an upbringing from a monetary standpoint that was very different from mine. And she was doing the thing that a lot of women did in Red Cross, and not a lot of, a significant number of women did, where they worked for a few years and then they kind of went on the charity circuit when they got to middle age. And so that was her kind of trajectory in life. I was working to make ends meet. So we walk in and she's dressed that day differently than I typically see her, a little bit fancier. And she's walking in with a Wall Street Journal tucked under her arm, which I've never seen her carry before. And I'm like, you've got a Wall Street Journal. And she stopped as we were in the parking lot before she went in, and she said, yeah, she said, I always get a little bit nervous because they always stop me. And I had this moment of like, wow, what is happening here? Because of the two of us, she could have easily afforded to become a member, to, she belonged socially to that strata. I did not. And so that she consistently would run into, and we talked about this, she'd consistently run into these moments where she was stopped and questioned and I wasn't. At the time, it was the early 90s, and I'd never heard the term privilege before, white privilege. And it wasn't until many years later that I heard it and was like, now I know how to process this experience. But that for me was this real moment of, the color of my skin, the assumptions that are made about me in some of these spaces that are frankly, in my 20s were absolutely wrong about who I was and where I came from and what my family might be. It was this moment of, wow, despite all of this progress that growing up in this northern town where history is seen as something that's accomplished and it's through a particular lens, it's presented as a neatly packaged, we've solved these issues. It wasn't, and it was ongoing, and it was still, even in the 1990s, very much present in the life of a lot of my coworkers. So it was a major just kind of paradigm shift for me. And I'm grateful for the people that I worked with in those years that were patient and kind and willing to talk about and share their experiences. And I think as I've grown older, I've become even more appreciative of the time that I spent down there and the people that mentored me when I was young.
Truly, thank you for sharing, Kristen. And just hearing it once again, I was just embedded in your story as if I'm reading like a book, like something that's unfolding right in front of me. So yeah, that's great once again hearing that and knowing how that truly impacted and shaped you from back in the 90s to now, and still how much more we can do and how much more, like I would say, like we have to continue to do. So thank you again for sharing that. And Phil, you up next, my friend.
Well, good. Unlike a lot of you, I grew up in another time and place. I grew up, well, I was born in 1939. There was a war that was starting then. The Depression was ending. We were used to not having much as far as creature comforts and money, etc. So as I grew and started overcoming all this and looking around and seeing what people didn't have, I started gravitating towards belonging to service clubs. For example, Lions, Rotary, Chamber of Commerce is a service club of sort, and trying to share my good experiences with others. And I've learned a lot about people in doing that, but part of my goal was always to try to get the people that we were helping to be on our side and working with us. But despite all that, after 40 some years in Waunakee service clubs, I still look around the meetings and all I see is people like me. I don't want another service club. I don't want a Hispanic service club or a Black service club. I want a service club that will encompass everybody. And I wonder how I can get people to join my clubs and give back to the community and feel comfortable doing it. And obviously the comfort level isn't there, because I noticed a young man riding his bicycle to work past my house every day and coming home later in the day. And I wave at him, and even though I'm such a charming guy, he's having trouble making eye contact with me. And I just, I just can't get past that. I know it's there, and I'm trying to overcome it, but I'm just not good enough at it yet. So it's altering my thinking, and in that I'm admitting that I'm not good enough. But I don't know what you're getting out of what I'm saying, other than I would like to see people different, that look different from me, in our Waunakee service clubs, so we can work together to overcome some of these issues. That's it.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. And trust and believe, looking in your eyes, I definitely will always stop and talk to you. I can see that. But I like what you just done. A couple of us took some stories that kind of shaped us in our past, and it sounds like you took something very current and relevant and made it be your story, your experience for us right now. And that speaks volumes to, once again, where we want to go and where we're headed. So as always, really appreciate the opportunity to hear that wisdom that you can share with us. All right, Betsy, on over to you, my friend.
Yeah, before we head into round 3, I just want a couple of responses if possible. So 2 things that came up for me. One, Gary was just, and it might have been between my screen sharing and some of the distractions I had with technology, but I know you were talking about your friend that you coached, and I did not catch if you talked about his identity. And I just wanted to name, he was Latino, is that correct?
No, he was Black.
He was Black, okay.
Yes.
I couldn't remember from our time together.
Probably Latino Black.
Okay.
Probably a mix
Yep.
there.
Yeah, good. So I just wanted to name his identity because and I'm sorry if I missed that, if that was already said in the time, but I wanted to make sure it's important for us to do that, I think, when we're telling stories. And that was a really tender story that you told to us in our coaching cycle. So I'm glad that you were willing to reshare it. I know that his loss has impacted you greatly. So we still extend our condolences. And Phil, my thought on people showing up at your service clubs. I guess my flip on it was like, and do you show up at theirs? I think I was listening. Clearly I've got like a podcast problem. But I was listening this morning to Gloria Ladson Billings on the Anti-Racist Educator, and she's a local professor, just an absolute just diamond in our city. And she had an insight today that made me think of you, Phil, just now, in the sense that she was talking about the opportunity and achievement gaps, and she said, we really, I don't want to look at test scores. And as a longtime educator, I'm so accustomed to data in a very quantitative fashion. And she said, so I went to Black churches and I asked Black families, and I was listening to her tell this way of gathering information. And it just sparked for me as you were talking, I think. And so something to consider, okay? All right, so we're gonna move into round 3, unless there's someone else who wants to respond. I kind of jumped into a response right there. Does anybody else want to respond right now to anything that's been shared so far? Good, all right, you're doing great in this Squircle, everybody. I know it can be a little bizarre to do this live like this. So let's try again to share my screen. And round 3. So just doing a quick time check. I think we should be good. We have 4 people in this round, and then our final round, and then time for responses. I think we're doing okay on time. So Antonio, feel free to interject if you feel that we need any time constraints. But here's the question. How are you considering new perspectives every day to serve our most vulnerable and marginalized community members? So just pausing to really consider how are you considering these new perspectives every day to serve our most vulnerable and marginalized community members? And we will start with Erin.
That's me. Well, I guess I was laughing at myself when I saw this, and then my first thought was like, well, I've been reading and trying to listen to podcasts and like diversify my media, and like what sort of shows do I gravitate to, or documentary, movie, what music am I listening to? And then reading and rereading that Washington Post article that you guys sent, like what is reading, and then it becomes just a book club, then just becomes a social talk about drink over wine. And I think in my one-on-one or two-on-one with you guys this summer, I kind of opened up about like I guess I had been frozen, I feel like, in this fear of like, I'm going to do this wrong, or like, I'm trying to read this and like learn what I don't know, and, connect with stories that I haven't experienced. And almost like frozen in like this overwhelm of like, how can I like turn that into action? And how, in my role, can we act like, can this be of service and not just acknowledgement? And I think doing some of the same, like listening and researching in like other areas of my life, like I coach lacrosse, I'm on the board of leagues that were, that my teams are in, and it's like recognizing the history of the sport and how that is, comes from Native culture, and yet has just, taken a lot from and disregarded that and things like that. And then outdoor recreation, a big part of my life, like narrowing it down to then like in our own community, like in my own team, like starting small, if that makes sense, or in our own parks, like am I experiencing them, like I guess just trying to stop and take these big things that were overwhelming me into the small lens of just Waunakee, if that is starting point.
Yeah, and just in the mirror, right? Like you're talking about like sort of small circles, and the circle is right here, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Next up is Bill.
I knew I should have taken the other question. The whole thing is, with me is because I'm in two worlds of chaos right now. I mean, besides the one we're talking about now, I'm living in the COVID world, and every day, what I see, and I hope to keep going, and I hope to keep open, is that as I think generally as a people, and I'm hoping that's all of us, I believe it is, that when we're under crisis, that we basically look for the best way to do things, right? And every group has better ways, but again, being where I come from, we have a set of rules that we appreciate, that we think works best. And then as I watch the other crisis that I'm in the healthcare side, I go, hey, we are very open to different ideas during chaos, right? And hopefully, because we're looking for the best way to survive it, basically. So as we go through this, I'm basically trying to open myself up to more mundane days, more regular problems, to basically take the same approach. Like, what really would help? What would really work here? But because I mean, mine is five, again, to Kristen's story, we have 5 generations. We knew we had, worst case, right? You could run back to the farm and you would survive, right? And that is not everybody. And so we have trying to find the people who have learned to survive in other ways there's some approaches that we probably could endorse, and I'm trying to find them as I go through. And so I appreciate this process. That's
Chris.
Thanks, everybody, for all your comments so far. I see the board members tonight, and I see there's some of you that look really like you're into the screen, and others of you that are kind of sitting back and a little tired. And I would say that, you know, this question, when I read it, and I'm going to read it, how are you considering new perspectives every day to serve our most vulnerable and marginalized community members? And as I was reading that, I look at it that this is a hard question for me, because in my role, I'm trying to serve all of our community members. And this is pinpointing it down. So doing that, I look in, and as I look at the screen, I think of our seniors as a group that's a vulnerable group at all times. And Phil, not that I'm saying you're a senior, but you brought it up earlier. You know, our seniors, we have to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to help them. Right now, especially during the pandemic, as Dr. Ranum just brought up, this is a very difficult time for our seniors, and we need to make sure we're taking care of them. And Phil, I know you're out on the front lines every day, doing that with Meals on Wheels and different services that we're providing in the community. Then I look at Aaron, and I look at the different barriers. You know, Gary's comments earlier were about barriers to that child and what's in front of them. Our youth has many barriers in front of them, whether they're white, black, Hispanic, doesn't make any difference. They have so many barriers in front of them right now. And I look at every day trying to listen to all those different demographics to hear what they're saying, to try to figure out how can we help and tear down that barrier. We may not be able to eliminate it, but there's ways for us to make it easier entry points in. And you know, when I see Aaron, I think of the kids today coming out of school. You know, I have $75,000 worth of debt from student loans, and I want to buy a house. I have that debt, and I just came into the marketplace where if I can get a job, and that job isn't as good a paying job as we need it to be, how do I get to a house? Well, maybe I can't get to a house. I'm going to have to rent. Well, if rents are higher, how am I going to afford the rent to stay into a place? And when I think of that, I'm looking at Aaron on the screen and my daughter and my son and so on and so forth. And I think they're just starting to experience that because of what we have going on right now. And our minorities have been feeling that forever. That entry point, those barriers to get in. And I think that just looking at it through different lenses of different people and hearing what they're saying, not just listen, but hearing what they're saying, it helps to figure out, all right, that's an issue that we absolutely have to be addressing today. Or it's something that we're going to be working on for years to come, but we need to start today. That's you know, so considering the perspectives, that's my perspective and what I need to do on a daily basis. I invited Antonio to come to Waunakee next year with his family, and I'll bring him up on stage and introduce him to the community. And hopefully he's still going to come, and hopefully we'll be done with the pandemic and that can take place. So I'll leave it at that.
All right. There was a lot in that. Does anybody, I know Nyla's going next with this question, but does anybody want to respond at all to anything that's been said so far?
Gary looks like he wants to.
Yeah, Betsy, I don't know how to, you know, we live in a community where our interaction with people from different races and diversity and income levels, we don't have a lot of diversity here. And so how do you know, people will say, well, you know what? Waunakee needs to have more young kids. They got to have housing so young kids can afford to live in Waunakee. And it needs to be more affordable because you know what? Then other races, they would love to live in Waunakee. But you know what? I've got a 24 and a 25-year-old, and they would never have any interest to live in Waunakee. They want to live in Madison, or they want to live in Milwaukee or Minneapolis. They want to be in a big city. So I struggle with this. Gosh, I wish we had more diversity in Waunakee, but how do we force people? Because maybe Waunakee doesn't have the right demographics. How do we change that to make it more welcoming for them to come here? Because you know what? Maybe they want to be in Madison because that's what they like. I don't know how to answer that. Maybe I didn't explain it well, but it's always been a struggle for me. How do you make Waunakee change if people don't want to?
Let's go Kristen first, and it looks like you took your mic off, and then Chris, if you have something, I saw you take your mic off as well. So let's go Kristen first.
Yeah, I think that part of the answer is to recognize that when we talk about our Waunakee community, we often talk about the community as more than just the village borders. And I think that those of us who live here feel there is this community that's more than just our village borders. Within those village borders, but then also outside of those village borders, we do have, we're not an exclusively Caucasian, European descended community. And so we do have folks that have different heritages and ethnicities here that have moved to our community, are from our community originally, have maybe lived here all along, that we don't necessarily think of as kind of our heritage families or people that have always been here. So I think part of what I see as our mission, or what I see as our charge, is nurturing the folks that are here, and including and supporting and uplifting the people that are here. And if we can start to do that in a more concrete way, then that's maybe the first step. And then starting to identify what are the other barriers that are preventing people from moving here that might enrich our community. And we talk about, sometimes I think we slip into the habit of talking about race and income as if they're the same thing. And they're not. Poverty has its own set of issues. Race has its own set of issues. We experience that intersectionality no matter who we are, but recognizing that those things aren't necessarily exclusive. So when we're talking about what does it mean to have affordable housing, what does it mean to have middle-class housing, what does it mean to have upper middle-class housing, those aren't racial categories. And how do we foster a community that when people who aren't here look at us, say, yeah, that's a place that's going to uplift me and is going to help me live the life that I want to live. So anyhow, I kind of talked in a circle there, but I really, what you said, Gary, really resonated with me. So yeah, and we've got some challenges. We can do it though.
Antonio?
Like to add to what you just shared, Kristen, and to kind of, in my mind, kind of sew it all together. Just a question I will propose to everyone on the screen is like, how can you make those in your community feel included in the community that they already are in? And so I'm wondering, can we get out of the weeds of trying to look outside and look within? That's what I picked up from what you said, Kristen, about really nurturing the relationships and the individuals that we have in the community right now today. And if we can do that, then that's the place to start all the way from within. So what you said just kind of sparked that thought. So I just wanted to share it.
Chris, did you want to add something?
I'm not sure. My biggest fear is when I say these things, I don't want to offend any of our residents, that this is going to go out onto Facebook and all those things. That's always a concern to me. And I go back to Gary's question, and Kristen said it already. I mean, barriers for people. If I want to come into Waunakee and I see on Facebook and everything that we're a very anti-minority community, do I want to enter into that community? I almost feel like that's a barrier that goes up by the people that are actually trying to help the situation when those things occur. But also being aware as board members and citizens in the community of those barriers and trying to figure out how we can take them down is important. It can't be just us as a board. It has to be our community as a whole. So that's really what this is ultimately going to come down to.
Go ahead, Antonio.
if I may. And a thought I had when you were sharing, Chris, was you spoke to the barriers. And my question I wrote down is, I would like to invite you all to lean into this question. Why can't barriers be eliminated? So just a question, just like I say, invite you all lean into it. Why can't the barriers that you all see, why can they not be eliminated? So just something to ponder.
Thank you. Okay. I think, Nyla, I know you are waiting patiently, and I really appreciate you. Chris, you mentioned like offending people and the Facebook group, and, shout out to Want to Talk Diversity, who certainly has a few people who are with us tonight. That is such a, that's such a great group to be a part of. I've been pretty quiet, knowing some of the work I have coming up, so I've been sort of an observer there. But one of these things that we are doing here is this is like a fishbowl, right? So we are putting some thoughts into a space where people have that access to look at us and create their judgments and their narrative of what we're saying. And I'm just noticing in myself, when something is said that I am not in agreement with, it is something that I'm just pausing with and trying to give enough space to. And I think what I need to say before we move into Nyla's response actually jogs back, but it's closely tied to what you said, Chris. And it jogs back to Bill and Phil and their original hope of wanting everyone to be as happy, right? And that is a well wish and a good intention. But it brings to my mind a couple of things. I mean, really, there's like existential ideas around what is happiness and joy, and how does that differ person to person. But it also brings to mind something that I saw recently on social media, where it said being Black isn't exhausting. And then it listed all these things that are exhausting. White supremacy is exhausting. White centering is exhausting. White privilege is exhausting, right? And it was a message really to Black folks to say, don't let what is exhausting steal your Black joy. Like, being Black is not exhausting, but white supremacy absolutely is. And so I wanted to bring that into the space because I'm in the work that I've been doing. White supremacy is a pretty common term. I like Resmaa Menakem's term white body supremacy. And we think of it sort of at the very tip of like the genocide and violence, but there's that whole pyramid, right? And at the very bottom is minimization and indifference. And so if I'm referring to, if you just Googled the pyramid of white supremacy, it's just this, and like I said, at the very top, it's genocide and violence. At the very bottom, it's minimization and indifference. And the danger we run into, I think, when we start to say everyone has a challenge, right? Like all of our kids have challenges, is that right now we're really focusing on our oppressed, and how we speak and how we think can kind of further that oppression when we're talking about kind of equalizing the challenge across the board. It is not the same, right? And I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine that everybody would be able to be as happy as Phil and Bill in the same way, right? Now, can they experience joy? Can they experience happiness? I surely do hope so. And I've gone way out on a limb here with talking about this in this way and in this time, but it felt really necessary to just bring forth this idea that we really want to focus on dismantling what is what if you split the word disease, dis-ease, right? Like racism is a heart disease, right? And we've got doctors in the room, we've got professionals in the room. This is something that we're trying to tackle within. So I'm going to pause there because I could go on, and I know we can't be here till 1 a.m. But Nyla, would you mind answering this question? And oh, you unmuted. Okay, girl, I was just about to say.
Okay, I was in the spot that Aaron was in when I read that article from the Washington Post. And I'm going to go about this in kind of a reverse route. I guess I must process things differently than many. In order for me to try to understand and comprehend what minority people live, I thought, let me put my white into perspective. Where am I because of whiteness? So looking at that, I realized that I went to an all-white school in a rural community, and not far, and it was in the Crawford County area, and it was a very small community. But I also realized, because I'm kind of a history buff, that maybe a half an hour, 40 minutes down the road, at one time there was a Black community, and it was called Wheatsville. And somehow, for some reason, somehow that community completely disappeared. The descendants come and have a reunion once a year, from what I understand, at the site where the community was, to celebrate their ancestry and to come together. Some of the people are white, some are colored, but they all come together. And so I wonder why the small community that I lived in survived and that settlement did not survive. So then I think about 1977, my husband was looking for a home in Middleton because that's where his family had settled when they moved to Dane County. Everything was so expensive. It was very expensive for what you could buy. So for what he could have bought a very old home, and he would have had to gut out, and we would have had to basically completely redo. In Waunakee at the time, we could buy a 7-year-old ranch house that was ready to move into. So we moved to Waunakee. But then I'm wondering, and I'm looking around and I'm seeing it for what it was. In 1977, if I would have been a person of color, the real estate person wouldn't have ever brought me to Waunakee to look at a house. The reason I'm doing this is because I realize that being white has changed the whole perspective. My children grew up here with a great education in a great community, going back to our roots every weekend and farming and being in the country, but yet they got a wonderful education here that they probably wouldn't have gotten if my husband and I were of color. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, so just taking a moment to allow space for the emotions that come up and the thoughts. And Antonio, do you have anything in response before we move on?
No, you said it. I was just thinking, just taking a moment to embrace and to actually examine and feel the conversation and the emotions and the words, and not being in the midst of the board members' communications and inner circle. I guess I'm hoping or thinking, is this the first time that you all have had this, I would say, rich conversation? I don't know, like I say, just still being new to this team, but just really taking some time to embrace the communication and the conversation that's happening. I really appreciate it.
All right, so we are going to move into sort of a closing round. And Antonio, you're going to be leading that in just a moment, unless you freeze and I'll pick you up. And just prior to, I just want to acknowledge sort of the if it was surprising, the language I was using. It's common for me now. I think Dismantling Racism is a workbook by Tema Okun and a number of other co-authors. And so if there are questions from anyone observing or anyone in the board that you want to follow up with, we're good friends now. I would be happy to kind of continue to probe when we're not able to in this setting of having 15 minutes left. So I'm delighted to go to round 4. Antonio, are you ready for that? You want me to share my screen?
Yes, please.
All right.
I would say another thought that
Sorry.
Was you find the last screen, the last slide?
There you go.
Okay, so another thought that I had as we were listening to one another be vulnerable was that I really wanted to honestly encourage everyone to be direct with your words, meaning with your language. And I know that that can be tricky, even scary for what it's worth. And truly, I think we recognize that, but then also it's something that, once again, I would like to invite you to lean into, is just finding spaces where you can be just direct with what you're saying in your words and in your language. And that way it will hopefully get to a point of being able to, I'm just gonna put my friend Betsy on the spot a little bit, for her being vulnerable and sharing that piece of her that was kind of sitting at the top of, I'm gonna say at the top of her heart, where she shared using the language about white supremacy and things of that nature. That was being direct in her language. And that was her understanding from the work and from the things that she has done to be able to feel comfortable sharing. So I definitely want to take a moment to appreciate her for speaking very direct to that. All right, as we move into our last and final round, everyone get a chance to go. You already know who's up next. You can see it on the screen. So in round 1, you mentioned your vision and what you hope for. But now we want you to think about, I want you to share, what are you committed to seeing and supporting in Waunakee's future to make it possible? So thinking about your vision, your dream, and what are you committed to seeing and supporting to make that vision, make that dream come to life? And we will start with Bill.
All right, I found the mute button again. So this is one of those things where I see, and as each step, as I listen to Betsy and Antonio, I go, there's different, it feels like a stepwise process, like in getting more information would be more information. I just did it again. I'm back. Am I back? Okay. My thing is that, like, to Gary's point, I think I've been through, not to the drama of where Gary had the kid, but we've done many episodes where you're helping somebody, but at the same time, I don't know if I'm helping, right? I mean, I don't know if there's better ways to incorporate, I know a little bit about the Filipinos, and I know a bit about that, and that's a sort of an easy call. I mean, we were incorporated because we were part of it. You know, like becoming part of it seems to let us go into it. So how does one become part of it? I mean, and that's my long run. I go, I've been part of things with, again, back to sons, friends and things like that. But how do you get part of it with more of the adult culture? Like how does that happen? I'm very much would be interested in what Phil has talked about a little bit, like where you're joining in, but where's the starting point on that? You know, like where am I rude and where am I, you know, where is it easy to get in and help? And not help. That's not what I think it is. I think it's join. I don't think it's help. I think these are cultures that are, and people, there's differences between the Sauk Prairie rural culture and the arena rural culture, which, you know, that I come from. I mean, so there is this process of, I think what my hope is that we could just do things because they're fun. I mean, because they're worthwhile and work together. I don't know where to go to the start point. You know, it's like where you're at the race and you don't know where you're beginning. So.
All right, thank you for sharing that. We'll just continue on in sake of time. Aaron.
Yeah, well, kind of jumping off what Bill just said, like there's like this end vision, but there's like probably so many little things that we can do both as individuals and like as an entity to increase access, or, you know, just like start these conversations. Like our materials and our application packets are available in different languages, or, you know, like our discussion of weeks are like, do we have an interpreter, or those kind of things. Like there should be questions that, you know, are probably really quickly addressed. And then there's kind of like this long-term partnership, and kind of going back to, you know, Phil and the service clubs and what Betsy had added with like, where are we showing up? Like, you know, we show up to the partnerships or the organizations or businesses that have been here for a while, or that, you know, are bigger or have more of a, you know, presence in different ways. But like, where can we like help incubate new businesses, or like, I guess finding out more ways the village can show up and like start conversations, and, you know, look at ourselves too in the mirror. Like our committees, like, do we have good representation on committees? Like, do we have women on some of our committees? Do we have people of color? Do we have, you know, young people, like, kind of thing? Look at ourselves. So I don't know. I think lots of little things that we probably should keep as a priority. But I think our partnerships and like where we're showing up for people and engaging them is a good start.
Got it. Thank you, Aaron. All right, Gary, you up, my friend.
You know, Phil and I spent maybe, I don't know what it was, Phil, 6-8 months of our life rebuilding the Waunakee Neighborhood Connection building, and, you know, 6 days a week. And I think that's one of the great examples in Waunakee of a real caring, you know, an outreach to the community for Waunakee. And I think people forget about some of the things that we do today. One of the things personally I'd like to focus on is I'm on the board at Schumacher Farm, and I look at it's a Dane County park, a Dane County resource, and we focus on it because it's in near Waunakee, that it's just Waunakee. But I think we need to reach out, and I look at, you know, the north side of Madison, an opportunity to take maybe a bunch of disadvantaged kids who just maybe have never been out in a rural setting, given an opportunity to come out to Waunakee and experience it. And, you know, maybe it gets their folks to come out. And so I think, to me, that's one opportunity that I look at and say, you know, here's how I could maybe make a difference in showing the goodness of Waunakee and the opportunity that is here. So.
I appreciate that, Gary. We got next, Chris.
Yeah, I appreciate everything that the three previous people have said. Aaron, I'll point out to you that our committees are almost 50-50 male-female ratio right now. So we've done a fabulous job at making sure we have that and going out and doing that. And we've seen a shift in the board. Our board right now today, It was 6-1, 5-2, and now we're 4-3. So who knows? Next election, it might be 3-4. The ratio could change. We don't know. To your point about minorities and representation on our committees, it's important that we encourage our minority community to apply to be on the committees. That's something that we can do. I think Antonio might have been going here. Maybe I'm wrong, but messaging is so important. Everything that we do as a board, we can have messaging in that. There's both good messaging and bad messaging when it comes to this, as far as I'm concerned. One of the messages we just sent at our board meeting on Monday night, we're recognizing MLK Day as a holiday for the first time. That's a step and a message right on itself out to the community as a whole, but other communities that they see that we've done that. In addition to our policy that we put in place. Kristen, thank you again for doing a lot of work on that. Todd as well, I know that you're on here. That we put that together, we made that statement out in the community. Another strong statement for us and what we're doing. Those are the continuous types of things that we need to continue to do and encourage within the community. And that will help to get to the vision. We each had a different vision that we looked at. I had one that it's everybody are just people that are participating and acting as a community. And that's what I want to get to. And those are the things that I think will help us to get there. In addition to all the ideas that you're going to come with. And then looking at it from different lenses. We each have a different lens that we look through. I have 2 extra, that I use, but that's my feeling. So I'll end there.
Oh, you got it, Chris. Thank you. And in the sake of time, I'll move on, or else I'll be here cracking jokes. But yes, thank you for that. We got Phil. You next, buddy.
Oh yeah. What am I going to do to support my vision? I'm going to keep doing what I've done. You commented about, Betsy commented about, have I gone to service clubs in other areas? Well, yes, I've gone to Black churches. I've gone to Hispanic churches. I've gone to the Medicine Boys and Girls Club. I've gone to some South Side community centers, and I've worked, but that's just service projects. That's not real actions. It's just service projects. I've sat through many things like this that we're doing right now, but that's just words. It's actions, small actions, meeting people, being nice to people, not walking across the street when you see somebody you don't want to talk to. Smiling and making people not be afraid to make eye contact with you. That's the only way I know how to do it. The big words and the plans kind of fail me because they failed so much in the past because people didn't follow through on them. And I think it's follow through that we need more than anything. Once we're finished with this little session, it's follow through. That's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to follow through.
Appreciate that, Phil. Perfect. All right, Nyla, it's up to you.
Okay, Phil, I agree that follow through is everything. And I want to thank everyone for everything that you've provided and all the information you shared. The one area, I guess part of the perspective that I see is it comes down to what I've been working on for a very long time. I've been very vocal about it. I have been committed. I am committed to obtaining housing in Waunakee for those who are currently priced out living in Waunakee. And, those of us who have our homes and who are here every day, we're happy. Some of us don't see a reason why we need housing that people can afford. I was on the housing task force. We worked very hard for a very long time. We tried to get information from many aspects. But one thing I think that we didn't do, we didn't go into the break rooms of industries or restaurants and say to the workers, if we had housing here that you could afford to live in, would you? And I think that's a very relevant question. Rather sending out questionnaires for people to fill out, that they don't have time to fill out or they're too tired to fill out, and talk to them and say, you know, we're trying to make decisions, we're trying to come to conclusions. We need to know if you don't have an interest in living in Waunakee, then we're done. You know, we don't have, you know, what I'm saying is we really have to know when it comes to housing, what we need to do, what we want to do. And the only way I feel that you can really legitimately do that is to know who wants housing in Waunakee. And the only way of doing that is to go out and talk to them. So that's my input.
Thank you, Nyla. All right, and we're finished with you, Kristen.
Thanks, Antonio. So just kind of on a couple of different levels. Personally, I'm committed to listening, to acting based on what people are sharing with me, because I think that's really important, to asking what folks' experiences are, what they think of what's going on. I'm asking hard questions of ourselves and of our community members too. And also bringing my professional skill set, those skills that apply to the table to help move the needle on this. From both an institutional perspective as a member of the board and personal level, I'm committed to showing up, to partnering with people, and to uplifting voices that we're not hearing, and uplifting those who don't currently feel included in the community. And then on an institutional level, as a board member, I'm committed to finding resources, monetary, personal, personnel, whatever resources we need, planting a flag on this and defending the territory and hopefully advancing that flag with every day that passes by. And I'm adding to that Phil's follow through, because many a great initiative has died after, and I see this in my own community development life, after a series of meetings like this in which we feel we've had the meetings, that means we've accomplished something, now we're done. So this I see as, I'm committed to making this the start and not the end point. This is, we're at the starting line right now. So that's what I'm committing to.
Perfect summary, Kristen. As you're talking, I'm listening to you. And once again, like I shared before, when you're speaking, I definitely get involved. Like you telling the story, I'm like, but I think you did exactly what I would have wanted to say now, is that every one of you has brought something to this table and has something to offer. And trust, support, commitment, sacrifice. And I'll share this last piece. A good coach once told me at one point in time that there's no need to go out looking for what you need, because you already have it within you. So everything that you need in order to get this done, or to get things moving, or to just get off that starting line, you have it in you. You have it within you already, and you have a team of individuals. And trusting one another, respecting one another, and just supporting one another, that's the team commitment that I would like to charge you all with, and invite you all to kind of go into your night and into the near future with that in mind. So once again, for me, thank you for the opportunity and your time tonight. I really appreciate it. I think it was amazing round of conversations, and yeah, can't wait till we continue more. Betsy?
Yeah. So I think the follow through can happen as we go back to just that idea of the face you see in the mirror, right? So the follow through and action is what happens when you start to evaluate maybe even how this conversation went. What emotions came up for you, what feelings, what thoughts. Can you meet that with some curiosity? Right? Meet it with some curiosity. You might have found moments of defensiveness. You might have found moments of fear. Did I just say the wrong thing? Am I going to say the wrong thing? What does that mean that I'm afraid to say something that's right or wrong? Who determines what's right or wrong, right? As we close, I just want to, one of the questions that came up was, how does one become part of this? You know, we're talking about humanity here, and we're talking about us as a collective. We're talking about our community, right? And the unity within community. And we're striving for something that is not here now, but that we are hoping for in the future. And that's a more inclusive community. And I would say in response to that is begin tonight, right? Begin with the way that you interpret this experience and process it and sit with it, and then let it continue. And let it continue and grow and continue in conversations and dive in, so that it's not something that you dip in and out of, but you're fully immersed in. You're fully immersed in. You know, if you think of our teachers, you know, for a long time we were thinking about blended learning models and learning how to teach online. And it wasn't until we were completely immersed that every single one of our teachers mastered the skill of being able to educate online, right? When we are dealing with these types of issues, the issues of the heart, we're talking about humanity issues. And I just want to encourage you to immerse. Don't dip in and dip out, but immerse. It is time. It's always been time, and it will be time. So we're going to take some of the content that came up and probably what will come through the community and what we're listening to after this, and we're going to circle up again, squircle up again, and find each other again in a couple of weeks. So with that, I close. And Todd, do you have something to close us formally?
I'll just say, as you suggest that, as every board member is looking for some action from their words, what are next steps? As you start to think of, you know, as Betsy suggested, be curious about your comments and wonder what's next. If you see today things that you would like I or other members of your staff team to start to investigate, explore, and pursue, please do connect with me and to start sending us in some aspect of motion. Now, sometimes I'll be like, that is a lot of work. Can we sort of plan? Can we plan how we're going to do all that work? And I'm committing to either taking immediate steps if possible, or doing the planning to help moving in ways that you're envisioning. That's what your staff team is here for and is committing to you to do.
All right. So
All
with
right.
that, go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, everybody, for participating tonight and being in attendance. Obviously, with getting these meetings together is a challenge with this many of us, and we have all of our committees and other life duties that we all are undertaking. So I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. And I need Bill Random to make his favorite motion in the world.
Move to adjourn.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Gary Hertzberg. I will have one other comment, which is thank you, Betsy and Antonio, for organizing and running this evening. You did a very nice job, and I continue to be excited about what we're going through and the journey that we're all going on right now, and look forward to our next session. So that said, Caitlin, will you please take roll call?
Nyla Fry,
Aye.
Kristen Runge,
Aye.
Bill Ranum,
Yes.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Bill Willems,
Yes.
Erin Moran,
Yes.
Gary Hertzberg, who already left. That's okay. We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Nice.
Go see the wonderful debate. Hopefully they won't yell at each other the whole time.